Welcome to Cloud Solutions Podcast, where we simplify the world of cloud technology, one episode at a time.
All right, let's dive into AI on AWS, specifically the AWS Certified AI Practitioner exam. Think of this deep dive as your guide. Is this certification right for you? Should you take it? We'll see.
And we're going straight to the source for this, the official AWS exam guide.
Yeah, all the need-to-know info, what AWS expects, how the exam is structured, maybe even a few surprises along the way.
And even if you're not planning to take the exam immediately, this information is still super valuable. It's basically AWS telling you what's important in AI.
So if you want to level up your AI knowledge, stick with us. Let's unpack what this exam is all about.
So, the AWS Certified AI Practitioner exam, or AIFC01 for short, it's not for beginners. They're looking for people with around 6 months of experience with AI and ML on AWS.
Okay, so you've been playing around with AI on AWS a bit.
Exactly. But here's the catch. It's not about being a coding master. It's more about the big picture. Applying AI, not building complex algorithms from the ground up.
Phew, that's a relief. The guide actually says what they don't expect you to know. Things like developing those complex algorithms or diving into statistics.
Yeah, AWS wants to make it clear what this certification is and what it isn't. It's about knowing your AI and ML basics, knowing when to use what, and always keeping responsible AI practices in mind.
Speaking of the exam, it's not just multiple choice questions. Get ready for multiple response questions. Ordering, matching, and case studies too.
Oh, and there are also unscored questions. AWS uses those to test out material for future exams.
Sneaky. So you've got this mix of question types, and the score is from 100 to 1,000. Need 700 or higher to pass. Don't worry if you don't ace every section.
Exactly. You don't have to be perfect. Doing well in one area can balance out a weaker one.
And you get a score report. It shows your performance in each area, but it's the overall score that matters.
Now, let's talk about the content of this exam. It's built around 5 core domains. These are the essential things AWS thinks every AI practitioner needs to know.
Okay, I'm ready. What are those domains?
First, the foundation of it all. Domain 1, fundamentals of AI and ML, your knowledge of basic concepts and terminology, and AI use cases. It's about 20% of the exam.
Got it, the basics. What's next?
Domain 2, fundamentals of generative AI, understanding how those generative models work. Like LLMs, it's a big one. 24% of the exam.
Generative AI, everyone's talking about it.
And then Domain 3, applications of foundation models. This is where you actually use these models. The biggest part of the exam, 28%.
Things are getting real, from theory to practice.
Absolutely. But it's not all about technical stuff. Domain 4, guidelines for responsible AI, all about ethics, making sure your AI is fair and used for good, 14% of the exam.
It's super important. AI is powerful.
And last but not least, Domain 5, security, compliance, and governance for AI solutions, keeping your AI safe and secure, another 14%.
All right, so we've got our 5 domains: fundamentals of AI and ML, fundamentals of generative AI, applications of foundation models, guidelines for responsible AI and security, compliance, and governance. Comprehensive.
Exactly, to really understand what kind of knowledge the exam is looking for. Let's look at some specific examples from the guide.
Awesome. Examples always make things clearer. Let's start with domain 1, those AI and ML fundamentals. Remember those Russian nesting dolls?
Yes, the perfect analogy.
AI is the biggest doll. It's anything that makes computers act smart. Then there's machine learning nestled inside. Computers learn from data without specific programming. And finally, deep learning, the tiny doll in the center. It uses those multi-layered neural networks to analyze massive amounts of data.
Different levels of complexity. And the guide also goes into different types of data. Labeled, unlabeled, structured, unstructured. It's a lot.
Like a data buffet.
Yeah. And then there are the 3 main learning styles: supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement learning. The guide helps you understand which one to use when.
Like having a toolbox full of learning strategies. Now, domain 2, generative AI. This is where things get mind-blowing. AI that can write poems, compose music, even create images.
It's incredible what these models can do. And the guide emphasizes prompt engineering. How you talk to these models, that's crucial.
It's the secret language.
Then there's this concept of temperature. It influences the AI's responses. Higher temperature means more creative and unpredictable. Lower temperature keeps things more focused.
Wow, like you're controlling his personality.
And when it comes to using these models in Domain 3, the guide gets into the details. Selecting pre-trained models, understanding their limitations, combining them with external knowledge. It's called Retrieval Augmented Generation, or ARAG.
ARAG, so futuristic.
It is. Imagine asking an AI a question. It can access a huge database to give you the most accurate answer.
Amazing. So we've got fundamentals, generative AI, and practical applications. But we can't forget about responsible AI. Domain 4 covers the ethics, making sure we're using AI for good.
Absolutely. It's not just about building cool tech. It's about building tech that's fair and benefits everyone.
And lastly, Domain 5, keeping AI systems secure and compliant.
Exactly. To help you with that, the guide has a secret weapon.
Ooh, what's that?
An appendix with all the relevant AWS services. It's like a treasure chest of AI tools.
We're talking Amazon SageMaker, Amazon Comprehend, Amazon Recognition.
Amazon Bedrock, and more. It's like your own AI toolkit.
I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, in a good way. So we've got our 5 domains, practical examples, and a whole bunch of AWS services. Where do we go from here?
Now things get interesting.
Ooh, a cliffhanger. Guess we'll have to wait for part 2.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the AWS Certified AI Practitioner exam. In part 1, we looked at the exam, what it covers, the structure, and those AWS services.
Yeah, we covered a lot, but now let's really get into those 5 domains.
Right. Let's start with the foundation. Domain 1, fundamentals of AI and ML. This is where it all starts. Understanding the basic concepts and terminology.
Yeah, you need that solid foundation.
It's like learning the alphabet before you can write a novel.
Exactly. And the exam guide breaks things down nicely, starting with defining those core AI terms.
Right. AI 101, defining AI itself. Then machine learning, deep learning, neural networks, computer vision, NLP, and LLMs.
Lots of acronyms.
Yeah, but the guide explains them well. It helps you understand how they all fit together.
So like how are AI, machine learning, and deep learning different?
Right. They're often used interchangeably, but they have distinct meanings.
Like those Russian nesting dolls again.
Exactly.
AI is the biggest, machine learning is inside, and then deep learning is the tiniest one.
That's a great way to think about it.
And what about those 3 types of machine learning?
You mean supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement learning,
Yes.
right? It's like choosing the right tool for the job.
So supervised learning is like having a teacher,
Exactly. You have labeled data to guide you.
and unsupervised is more like exploring on your own.
Yeah, trying to find patterns without a map.
And reinforcement learning, that's all about learning from your mistakes,
Right. Trial and error.
like in real life.
Right.
Sometimes AI needs a teacher, sometimes it needs to explore, and sometimes it needs to learn from its mistakes.
The guide helps you understand which approach works best.
Okay, so we've got the concepts, but Domain 1 also covers using them, identifying real-world use cases for AI,
Yeah, knowing when and where to apply those AI superpowers.
like image recognition, NLP, speech recognition, recommendation systems, fraud detection, forecasting.
And the guide connects those use cases to specific AWS services.
Cool, so we can see how it's actually done on AWS.
Exactly. Think Amazon SageMaker, Amazon Transcribe, Amazon Translate, Amazon Comprehend, Amazon Lex, Amazon Poly.
A whole toolbox. But the guide also says when AI might not be the best solution.
Right. Sometimes a simpler approach is better,
It's about choosing the right tool.
even if that tool isn't AI.
Okay, so that's Domain 1, a solid foundation. Now, Domain 2, fundamentals of generative AI. This is where things get really interesting.
The realm of AI that can write poems, compose music, create images.
Mind-blowing.
It's rapidly changing how we create content.
So how do we even begin to understand this?
The guide starts with the basics. Things like tokens, the building blocks of text and code.
Like Lego bricks.
Exactly. Then there's chunking, breaking down large pieces of text into smaller pieces.
Okay, that makes sense. And then there are embeddings.
Right. Mathematical representations of words and concepts.
So the AI can understand the meaning, not just the words themselves.
Like translating from English to AI language.
And those embeddings are represented by vectors.
Yeah, mathematical objects that capture the essence of those words and concepts.
I'm starting to see how this all works. And prompt engineering is important here too, right?
Absolutely. Crafting those effective inputs for the AI.
Like giving it instructions.
Yeah, like you're directing a movie.
I like that analogy. And the guide talks about different types of generative models.
Like LLMs,
Wow.
based on transformer architecture.
The ones that can write like Shakespeare and code like a pro.
They're trained on massive amounts of data.
Incredible. What about foundation models?
Yeah, those are pre-trained models that can be adapted for different tasks.
Like multi-purpose tools.
And then there are multimodal models. They can handle multiple types of content, like text and images.
Wow, an AI that can write and illustrate a story.
And diffusion models. Those are great at generating realistic images.
It's like having artists and writers inside your computer.
But the guide also emphasizes understanding the capabilities and limitations of generative AI.
Right, for solving real problems.
It highlights the advantages: adaptability, responsiveness, simplicity.
But what about those limitations?
Well, sometimes they produce hallucinations, outputs that sound plausible but are factually incorrect.
So we need to be careful.
And sometimes it's hard to understand why they generate a certain output.
Like trying to read their mind.
And then there's accuracy. They're not always perfect.
So a healthy dose of skepticism is needed.
Now, the guide also talks about the AWS infrastructure for building generative AI applications.
How do we actually use these models?
AWS has a whole suite of services. For example, Amazon SageMaker Jumpstart. It provides pre-built models and algorithms.
Like training wheels.
And then there's Amazon Bedrock, access to a variety of foundation models.
A one-stop shop?
And there's PartyRock, a playground for experimenting with generative AI.
Sounds fun.
And Amazon Q for building question-answering applications.
So many options.
The guide highlights the advantages of these services: accessibility, efficiency, cost-effectiveness, faster time to market,
And of course, the benefits of AWS infrastructure itself.
security, compliance, responsible AI practices.
Okay, so we've gone from the basics to AWS services. What's next?
Time to get practical. Domain 3, applications of foundation models.
I'm ready. Welcome back. We've explored AI and ML fundamentals. We've seen the magic of generative AI. And now, Domain 3, applications of foundation models.
This is where we put those models to work.
I'm ready to get practical. The guide mentions design considerations. Sounds like we need to make some decisions before we start.
Absolutely. Choosing the right foundation model is crucial. The guide has some selection criteria, like cost.
Always important.
Yeah. But also the model's modality. Is it for text, images, audio, or a mix?
So for a chatbot, I'd want a text-based model.
Right. And then there's latency, how quickly the model responds.
Important for real time. Things like chatbots. Don't want a slow chatbot.
Exactly. And you also need to think about whether the model is multilingual, its size and complexity, how easily you can customize it, and the length of the inputs and outputs.
Finding the right fit.
Like choosing the right shoes.
Okay, so we chosen our model. The guide talks about inference parameters, how they affect the model's responses.
Right. These are settings you can adjust, like fine-tuning a musical instrument.
Okay.
One important parameter is temperature. It controls how random and creative the responses are.
So higher temperature means more unexpected outputs.
Exactly. You can also adjust the input and output length.
To control the quality of the content.
It's all about finding what works best for your application.
Now, what about retrieval augmented generation? RGen.
RG is a cool technique. The AI can access an external knowledge base.
So it has more information to work with.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Especially useful for question answering systems.
And AWS has services for implementing RG, like Amazon Bedrock,
Right. And remember, embeddings, you can store them in a vector database.
to quickly find similar concepts and relationships.
Like a search engine for concepts.
And AWS offers several services for that.
Amazon OpenSearch Service, Amazon Aurora, Amazon Neptune, Amazon Document DB, and Amazon RDS for PostgreSQL.
Wow, so many options. Now, what about fine-tuning these models?
Fine-tuning is like giving a pre-trained model a specialized education instead of starting from scratch.
So you're building on existing knowledge.
Exactly. The guide talks about different methods: instruction tuning, domain adaptation, transfer learning, even continuous pre-training.
Like continuous education for the AI.
Yeah. And data preparation is key for fine-tuning.
What should we pay attention to?
First, you need high-quality data, relevant to the task.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly. You also need to consider data governance, permissions, and privacy regulations.
But we can't just use any data.
And then the size of the data set, its diversity, whether it's labeled or unlabeled.
For some tasks, you need labels.
Like classification.
So each piece of data is tagged with the correct category.
Exactly. The guide even mentions reinforcement learning from human feedback, RLHF.
Using human feedback to guide the AI.
Right. Combining human expertise with AI.
Now, we need to evaluate our fine-tuned model. Make sure
Yeah.
it's performing well.
We need to test it.
How do we do that?
You can have humans evaluate the outputs.
Judging its performance.
And there are standardized benchmark data sets.
Like a standardized test for AI. The guide mentions specific metrics we can use.
But the most important measure is whether it meets the business objectives.
Right. Is it solving the problem?
Exactly.
We've covered a lot in Domain 3. Applying foundation models is complex,
It's a journey.
but exciting to see how they can solve problems.
Absolutely.
Speaking of real-world problems, we can't forget about the ethical implications of AI. Domain 4, right?
That's nice.
Okay, we'll have to wait for that. But for now, we've gotten a good grasp of the AWS Certified AI Practitioner exam, what it covers, how it's structured, those 5 domains of AI mastery, and all those AWS services. It's a lot to take in, but it's clear that AI on AWS is a powerful tool, and this exam can be your guide to mastering it. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.